is the Penn Tidal beach rod, squarely aimed at the UK angler. It's a bit of a do-everything rod really. Just looking at it in the light, it looks terrific. We're going to see how it handles with a variety of casts today on the beach. But I've got a feeling you'll be able to use this rod up and down the UK. And finally, Penn have actually made a rod that's aimed at the UK market rather than the American market. I think this is going to be a real winner. We're going to put it through its paces with a variety of casts as well. So whether you're doing a full pendulum or whether you're doing an overhead cast, we'll be able to find out. So initially, really good, looks impressive, but let's give it a go.
The 14-foot rod, 2 equal sections of 7 foot. There's some great maths for you there. But I prefer these longer rods. They do a 13-foot version, and I'm starting to prefer something a little bit longer. So I've always been interested at the price point of just over £100, because you're getting as much rod for your money, I think, as you can. Of course, you can spend more and get a better rod, something that's more refined, more powerful, a better blend of carbon. But there is a sweet spot, I think, where you have to spend a lot more to get marginal gains, and that's what we're talking about with this rod today. Is it for you? A lot depends on budget, but this is what you're going to get for a little bit over £100. Here in the UK, of course, we're faced with lots of different conditions and marks, from real deep rock marks, hauling in bigger fish like conger and bullhuss, to the south coast here, where we're more likely to catch small dab and whiting.
We talk a lot about how well balanced the rod is. So it's in 2 equal sections, and it does feel quite well balanced, and you hold it out, goes in quite nicely. Yeah, pretty good.
So how well rung is this? How accurate? You do get a variety, especially with these more budget rods, you do get a variety of how well rung it is. Do all the rod rings match up? Not too bad on here. Chinese friends are doing their job well, I think. I have sent rods back in the past that have terribly lined up. It does make a little difference to your casting, so yeah, always worth checking it if you're having a look at one in the shop, for instance. So interestingly, this is actually rung for a fixed spool reel and a multiplying reel. Now normally where you put the rod rings is dependent on what sort of reel you'll be using, but this is sort of goes back to that, a rod for everyone, because you can use both fixed spools and multipliers. I'm using a fixed spool today. That's my preference at the moment. So you've got a big first eye there, but that will still be low enough for a multiplier reel. So today we've loaded these reels with 15-pound braid and tapered leaders. But of course these reels and the rod, of course, will take heavier line. You might want to fish with 50-pound line straight through, and it will cope with that as well.
I don't know if you've seen this design before, but it's a really good idea. You basically, as you tighten up the reel seat, it tightens the reel seat itself to the blank, which means you can move it anywhere up and down just by loosening it, moving it up or down. Sometimes when you're fishing with a multiplier, you can use it in a butt down position, which this rod allows you.
I really like this sort of grip on the handle. It's simple, and it's all the same width as well. It's nice. We got it wet, doesn't seem to slip at all. So what am I actually looking for here? Well, I don't want a saggy bit in the middle of this rod, something that's wobbling. It needs to be a nice progressive taper of power. But I also want something that's got a bit of whip in that tip, so I don't have to wind up a big cast. It should be easy enough to flick out, 50-60 yards with an overhead thump. And I'm just feeling here for where that power in the rod really kicks in, which will probably need to put a bigger swing on this lead to get to work. So yeah, so far it's really good, because I want that butt to be nice and light and stiff, don't we all, and a nice progression of the power so we can put in a bigger cast if we need to. But for a lot of fishing, just dropping it short, we're going to use that tip. So and we'll have a go for some fish in a minute, and I'll see what that bite indication's like as well.
So you can compare it to more of a continental rod, which is my original Colmic here. Slightly thicker here, it's got a better handle certainly than the Colmic. It is a thinner blank on the continental. Colmic actually tapers a little bit quicker, and also this is the best position for the reel for me here on the new Penn. But you see I've been using the arm position here, which doesn't leave me much. It's quite narrowed under the arms when I'm casting, so that's a good reason to change or set this in a different position. So much easier there with the movable reel seat. All the way up, all the way up, all the way up. Similar size eyes on here. This is rough.
Now the Penn is rung for both multiply reel and fixed spool reel. It's kind of why I'm saying it's for everyone, whereas the Colmic is very much a fixed spool ready rod with that fixed reel seat position. Probably the most noticeable difference is in the tip. So the tip of the Conti rod is a lot thinner. I mean, it is a fishing rod. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you can have sort of high carbon rods that are very stiff in the tip. This has got a stiff enough tip, but I would assume there is a bit of a blend of glass in this tip. Now that really helps for a softer cast, and also a bit of bite detection. And then if you're leaning in to set that grip lead into the shingle, it feels like you can keep going and then just feel that lead, especially using braid as we are. It's not an out and out casting tool if you're into your pendulum class. I think if you're really into your casting, you might want to be looking elsewhere for something that's got that huge amount of punch. But it has got some power to it, and I'm not even compressing this blank as much as I could, I think. So with a 3-hook flapper on a 5-ounce lead in the water, we're just looking for the rod to sort of hold steady. Not particularly breezy conditions here, and not that much of a swell. That's pretty solid in there. You need a rod to, pick out the smaller fish, especially here in the south coast. And this is a good example of how a rod can be a bit more forgiving. I've done a very snatchy couple of casts here. It's like a half pendulum I use, more like a fishing pendulum. But it's a little bit rushed, the whole cast. But the rod, because of the amount of softness in that rod, it is correcting, and I can actually still manage to get a cast out. So it is kind of user friendly with that half pendulum there. One thing I instantly noticed with this rod, it does prefer a 6-ounce lead. to get the best out of it. You can get that power on quite early. I mean, you'll be able to fish with 4 and 5 ounce, but 6 ounces for me seems to be a sweet spot to compress it enough. See what happens with the bringing a few fish. Yeah, making easy work of this.
Just a bit of weight on the line, it's easy to lift it in. Thought it'd be a whiting. Really
so what can you get for your money nowadays? I mean, the Penn Tidal range are around 100. Double it for a Daiwa Saltis, that's also a 14.2. Similar price is the Shakespeare, the Salt XT, and same again the Sonic Dominator XS shore rods, and the famous Daiwa Sandstorm, which is another entry level. When we do these rod reviews, someone will always say, no, get a Century, and I understand that. You know, these rods are fabulous, but they're also, you know, you're looking at £500 for some of the top of the range ones. You do get everything with that. But what we're looking at today is more of an entry level rod with some realistic pricing. It's what you get for your money, I think, is important. Now, does it recognise small bites on the rod tip? Those are likely to be whiting. You see it just tapping on there. That's a good 100 yards away, but I think that's recognising those bites quite nicely, isn't it? You can see how it's just the tip bit moving as well. You haven't got that wobbly rod. That's quite a tidy little bait indication. Little taps of very, very small whiting. So, what was happening yesterday? We were getting little nicks in the line, and that's because I think in transit, I didn't check it, I've had to get a Fuji replacement. These aren't Fuji rod rings on this Penn rod, but I've got some Fuji rod, but I've got a Fuji rod ring here that I'm going to replace it with. So they do save a bit of money by not having those genuine Fuji ones, but they seem good enough. They're obviously a cheaper version. But it was my mistake really, because I was doing all that casting that you just seen, and it was just wearing and shredding the line. It can be quite dangerous, especially when you're doing a powerful cast, you know, swimmers in the water. So a little lesson learnt there. I will do a video actually of at some point next year of how to put the rod ring on properly, but it's emergencies now. Just going to try and put some bigger cast in, push this rod a little bit more today. So I'm not paid to do these promotions. Jerry's have very kindly sent this rod for me to have a look at, and these are my honest opinions. And actually the finish on the rod is all you need. So I don't know how much more, you know, you would expect on the whipping really. It's pretty solid. It's double whipped, I think, when we open that up. It's certainly good enough. They're not Fuji fittings on here, but but the replacement seems okay. Obviously we had that one break in transit, but in many ways I think this rod would be a sensible, it's not particularly exciting, but it is a good fishing rod, and it will cast a good distance. You can wind up a proper cast and be more progressive in your casting, and have a go at a full pendulum. Do I recommend it? Yes, I do. Are there better rods out there? Yes, but you'll need to pay more.
That's actually sit really well in that wind. Got big southwesterly waves coming in here, but if you look at it, it's sat quite solid, isn't it, in those conditions? Look.
Well, if you are in the market for a new beach rod and you want to spend a little bit more, then check out our review, the top right there, of the Daiwa Kenzaki. Have you got the rod? Are you going to get it? Do let us know in the comments. If there's anything else I can help with, please let me know.